Hi folks, and welcome to the C.R.Kennedy live stream channel, the live streaming station where we bring you all the latest and greatest in imaging products at a very safe social distance. So to everyone out there in isolation land, we say hello, and we keep hearing about how now is the time to start a new hobby or to fine-tune a creative passion. And if your passion is photography or indeed cinematography, you've come to the right place, because today we have a great show for you. We are talking about one of our favorite brands here at C.R.Kennedy, and that is Sigma. Now, we all know Sigma as the world's best lens manufacturer, but there's another side to Sigma, and that is as a camera manufacturer. And today we are going to be talking about what is perhaps the most exciting new camera on the market from any manufacturer today. To guide us through this new product, we have an industry expert, industry guru in fact. He is a member of the Australian Cinematographers Society. Not only that, he is an accredited member of the Australian Cinematographers Society, Mr. Pawel Achtel. Welcome, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Clem. Thank you for the introduction.
Now, Pawel, you're quite a revered figure in the cinematography world. Can you just guide us through a little bit about your background and how you got to this point?
So I've got master's degree in structural engineering, but I have very keen interest and in fact pursuing cinematography as my work. Most of my work was around the natural world and filming underwater in particular. But I also did some work for features and advertising.
And even now, you're working on. I know we were talking a bit before we started going live, and it's just absolutely amazing some of the projects you've been working on. Recently, you've been working on a very, very big project, maybe the biggest project in the cinema world at the moment. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I only took a small part in it, but indeed it's one of the most exciting projects that I work on. So it's Avatar sequel.
Fantastic.
And I was involved in it's not a secret that most of Avatar's action will be underwater. So I was helping with setting up the underwater cameras, and the rig is actually my rig that they're using. So it's quite exciting.
It doesn't get any more exciting than that. If you're talking about making movies, the new Avatar movie is about as big as it gets. And so the equipment that we're going through today, firstly the Sigma FP camera, it can be the world's smallest full-frame mirrorless camera, but it can also be scaled up to use as a fully fledged cinema camera capable of shooting on the latest Hollywood blockbusters. That's what we say when we're talking about scalability of this Sigma FP camera. So, Pawel, if you can just tell us how does this camera, we talk about it being a unique camera, being something that's totally new, how does this camera compare to other cameras on the marketplace today?
Well, I have particular interest in large format full-frame cameras, mainly because majority of my work is for GSCA, which is Giant Screen Cinema Association, which is essentially organization encompassing all the IMAX and giant screen production. So any camera that has large sensor is of interest to me. That's how I initially discovered it. It's another camera that has full frame sensor. Then looking a bit more into it, I discovered that there is more than just that. It has features that are very appealing for a number of reasons, which we can go through one by one. But yeah, initial interest was, hey, it's a large format sensor.
And so what sort of tests have you done on the Sigma FP, and how have you found it stacked up when you've done those tests?
So one of the most important tests that I've done was to do with color reproduction. And the reason I think it's important is because these days cameras have pretty high resolutions.
Yes.
You know, it's pretty much any camera you take
Yeah.
these days has resolution matching or exceeding the what's broadcasted. I think the color is one of those areas that is still early in the development cycle. It's something that can be improved by a large margin. So, and it's probably area that's most challenging in cinematography when we talk about colors. Each camera has different characteristics, and you know, how we deal with those greatly affects how the end result will look like. So that was probably most important test. There's more to it. There's things like dynamic range sensitivity. Sensitivity in particular, I think, and that has to do with a couple of things. The sensor design is very modern sensor, backside illuminated sensor. So this sensor sees in the dark, basically.
So that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and that's also a very attractive feature, apart from the color reproduction. So those two were my sort of main criteria why I actually took a keen interest in this little camera.
Yeah, well, so that's just reinforces how important color reproduction is as a cinematographer. And the other, well, another really exciting element of this camera is the versatility. I'll remind the folks watching at home, this has got a brand new mount on this camera, an L mount, and that just makes this camera so versatile. You've got a pretty interesting setup on your camera. This is your personal camera, Pal, that you brought in today.
Yeah, that's my personal camera. I find it quite cute, actually. It's very small, you know, smaller than typical DSLR. And guess what? I can put my favorite lens, which is Leica Tri-Elma 16-21.
Fantastic.
With a little aftermarket adapter. You know, it's a very inexpensive adapter that you can just put between the lens and the camera. And
how are the results coming out of that?
Well, exceptionally good, actually. You know, like this combo is pretty much Leica's user dream, if you like, because I prefer the camera from Leica itself. It's definitely much more appealing to me, but there is no replacement to Leica glass.
Yeah.
And I think this combo is really like, you know, a perfect one.
Very unique combination. We've got a couple of other FP cameras sitting in front of us on the desk here today with totally different setups, just to show you how versatile this camera is and all the possibilities you have with the Sigma FP camera. So Pal, if you want to have a look at this, the first setup we have here, it's pretty interesting looking. We've got a few of the accessories that you want us to run through. Yeah,
so this is a kit that is offered conveniently as a kit. So you don't have to buy bits by bits separately, and you know, there's cost efficiencies from that. So it starts with the kit lens, 45 millimeter, really nice feel to it. It's solid metal construction, f2.8. It's pretty much, you know, that universal medium size lens. Then it's there's a grip, which makes it feel like a DSLR camera. There's a little extension here that serves a number of purposes. You can mount your flash, but also, and this is probably one of the best features, external recording storage.
Straight to a solid-state drive.
That's right.
That we've attached to the top of the camera there.
And then we have a viewfinder, which you know, a lot of people like to use to shoot with viewfinder. So it makes it really nice portable kit. Another nice feature is the mount. So if you want to use it as a director's viewfinder, there's this little handle that allows you to hold it and use it
That's
as a
very neat.
and use it as a director's viewfinder. So really nice and compact.
Yeah, it's a very interesting looking setup there. So if you're shooting cinema at the moment, what is your current setup?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
We only ask interesting questions here.
Well, I use different setups, from Sony Venice to RED cameras, and pretty much the camera is usually picked up on a as per need basis. Usually with the productions that I do, it's the cost of it is not an object. It's mostly how suitable it is for the project.
So is there something else you want to talk about the charts quickly?
Yeah. So getting back to the color, I have a test which I developed. I'm actually on technical committee of Giant Screen Cinema Association, and I was requested to do a color test of all of the present cameras that are used for giant screen production, which are large format cameras. So those are Red Monstro camera, the Panavision DXL2, Sony Venice, and ARRI Alexa LF. You would think cameras way and beyond.
Expensive cameras, pal. Very, very expensive company that we're mentioning with this FP camera.
Indeed. Well, they respectful cameras, and those are cameras that are mostly used in giant screen production. So I was asked to evaluate their colors, and I have a specific test that many manufacturers use themselves, although they usually don't produce the results for general public consumption. And that test involves projecting monochromatic light directly on a sensor. So instead of using color charts, which are always imperfect because of the lighting of the dyes that you have there, and also the lens, when you actually project perfectly pure monochromatic light on a surface on the sensor, you can get pretty much good feedback as what the sensor can actually see. That allows us to do two things.
Yes.
One is to see the range of colors that camera can reproduce, and two, how accurately those colors are reproduced. So this is the test that I have done for large format cameras that I mentioned, as well as for the little Sigma FP.
Fantastic. And how are you finding the results of these tests? That's what everyone wants to know.
Well, as very surprising.
Yes.
Very surprising. It's, well, firstly about the test. I'm not sure if we have slides. So the setup that I had consists of monochromator. This is a mouthful sort of device, but it's a scientific instrument that essentially projects the monochromatic light on a surface of the sensor. So monochromatic light is your most saturated colors, ranging from red to cyans to greens to your yellows and reds. They called monochromatic because they consist of only single wavelength. The most saturated, you cannot get any more saturated colors, and you cannot reproduce that color with any other. They're very unique colors. So so this is what we've done, and if we could show the results for the that we had for a comparison between some of the main.
Let's see these results. This is what we all want. This is what we all want to see.
Venice on screen?
Okay, so first one is the comparison with Sony Venice camera, which is an impressive camera as far as the color reproduction goes. You can see that the colors extend, well, Sony Venice reproduces the blue colors and red colors very accurately. There is no color shifts there. They're as saturated as they can possibly be. However, you will see that the fully saturated greens at the top of that chromacity diagram are not as fully saturated as the color space would allow for. Surprisingly, the Sony Sigma FP reproduces those colors exceptionally well. In fact, it covers the entire Rec 2020 right to the full saturation, which was quite a big surprise because I must say that Sony Venice was up to this point probably my favorite camera in terms of color reproduction, both in the range of colors that it can see as well as in color accuracy.
Fantastic. Well, that's certainly a very interesting point. And we've been talking a little bit about price, Pawel, and what we want to talk about now is that we are launching a very special deal on our website. There's always something exciting if you tune into these live streams, and what we're offering today is a sale on the Sigma website, sigmaphoto.com.au. Just right now, we're launching a 15% off site-wide sale. That is 15% off the Sigma FP camera, 15% off the Sigma FP camera with the lens, and also 15% off any Sigma product available on that site. All you need to do is use the coupon code, which is ANZAC, fitting for this time of year. Coupon code is ANZAC. I think that's coming up on your screen below. And you get 15% off that. So there's really never been a better time to buy. If you've been thinking about getting the Sigma FP camera, or if you've been thinking about getting another Sigma product, now is really the time, Pawel. I know you've already jumped in, you've bought yours already, but if people at home are thinking about that, now is the time, because we've got that 15% off sale, which has just gone live now and will be live until midnight on the 26th of April. So, Pawel, getting back to the camera itself, there are a few interesting characteristics of this, but when you're shooting, why don't you particularly need a log color profile when you're recording RAW?
Okay, so I think that's something that is quite often misunderstood. The sensor is always linear, right? So the data coming off the sensor would not be in a log format. Log format can be applied downstream in order to save the bandwidth, the size of the image, but it's something done downstream. When you record RAW, it's always linear. So the Sigma has an amazing feature of being able to record DNG RAW, which means it's linear, but if you want to work with log, you can certainly do so and put a transform in a DaVinci Resolve, for example, and you can work with log as a post process. But RAW format would give you will give you always the most options, and it's the best starting point for when you do the capture.
Very interesting. And I've just got to remind the viewers at home, the normal price on the FP body is $3,299. With the 15% off, it becomes $2,804. And in the kit, it's normally $3,649 on the sigmaphoto.com.au website. With the discount, using the ANZAC coupon code, it's $3,101. So there's never been a better time to buy. If you've been thinking about getting into the Sigma FP camera or any other Sigma product, now is the time. So we've got a few questions. We love to see the questions from people watching at home. That's why we're doing these live streams, all about having a bit of interaction. So we'll answer those questions. Pawel will answer any of those more technically challenging questions. While we've got you in the studio here, Pal, it's great to have access to your vast expanse of knowledge. So we're happy to answer any questions that you guys have. Just throw them out there. We were talking about pricing on this camera, Pal. Some of the cameras you mentioned are around $60,000, and the Sigma FP body only is sub $3,000. So why would you choose a Sigma FP? It seems almost unbelievable at that price point over a camera that might be many multiples in terms of expense.
Well, most of the productions that I'm involved in, the camera is quite low on the expense list.
Because these productions are multi-million-dollar productions, aren't they?
Well, usually, but it's often, the daily budget is exceeds the cost of the camera. So, with those productions, you try to choose the best tool for the job. So I'm actually not looking at the price. So when I say that I like this camera, is as if it cost $60,000, I would still buy it.
You're the best customer to have, pal. The one that doesn't care about the price. Money is no object. But yes, we take your point. So if you took price out, and you have done this in your purchasing decision, you've compared the Sigma FP against a $60,000 cinema camera, and how have you found the results?
Well, I think it's got many features that I would prefer this camera from any other camera. Certainly the size of it makes it much more usable, and I'll give you an example. The rig that we used for Avatar, for example, it requires a crane to lift. It's large.
It sounds big.
Yeah, and it has two Sony Venice cameras, and it's good for many reasons.
Yes.
And in fact, 99% of shots are shot with that rig, but there is still 1% of shots that this camera rig is just too heavy, too big. And in those circumstances, it's the size that matters. And when it comes to cameras, the smaller is the better.
That's what we like to hear. That's what we like to hear. So we're going to get a couple of questions coming up here shortly. We're ready for them at any time. But I'll remind everyone that Pal's talking about size here. This is the world's smallest mirrorless full-frame camera in the world. This is the smallest. So sometimes even when you're shooting very big productions like Avatar, Pal's told us size does still matter. So, Mike, you got a question for us?
Yeah.
We're happy to have it any time.
Okay, so the first question here is, what codec does it use for video?
So I basically choose the most heavy codec, which is DNG. That's RAW. It's open standard, so you can read it with any nonlinear editing system. It's not compromised in any way, so it's before you apply a log curve or any curve on it, which means it gives you the most flexibility, and it's essentially what the sensor sees. So, so I think that's one of the features that makes this camera highly usable for even high-end productions.
Another question here is it suitable for use in live streaming?
Good question. Are we using it right now? Maybe. Pal, well, I'll let you answer that one.
Yes, both, in fact. Definitely for news. It's very, it's essentially pocket-sized camera. You can take it anywhere without making much fuss. The flexibility of using any lens, you can put ENG lens, or you can put cinema lens, or you can put pretty much any lens. In fact, we have, do you mind showing this lightweight zoom lens?
It's good, very good segue there.
So that's Sigma 14 to 24 millimeter lens, which actually has an L mount, which means it doesn't use any adapters, and you can use all the lens features, and that gives you pretty good flexibility in the field. And
So when you're using that 14 to 24 new Sigma lens, available in the native L mount, straight on the front of the Sigma FP camera, what have you mainly been using that lens for? Because this is an exciting new lens just out from Sigma.
Well, if you have a one lens to shoot,
Yes.
the entire program with, this would be probably the lens.
One lens to do it all.
Obviously, I'm a bit more of a prime person,
Yep.
but this is because of the type of work that I do. There is time to change the lens.
Yes.
The question was relating to news, and live streaming. That's probably one of the lenses that I would consider for that sort of use. Going back to live streaming, it's unique features. You can use the USB-C output right here from the camera, connect to your computer, and do live streaming directly off the camera. And so
Because live stream is becoming such a big thing now with everyone in isolation, lockdown going on. There's more and more live streaming now than ever before. And just knowing that this camera is a perfect tool for live streaming with that new 14 to 24mm lens is a great combination. Mike, are we getting more questions?
Yeah, there's
Keep
quite
them
a few.
coming in. We love them.
Okay, so this one's coming from Mr. John Kane, and he's asking, do you think Sigma could implement log with Cinema DNG?
Well, it's either one or the other, and I think log is, as I explained earlier, it's something that you get downstream. So it's basically a downstream process. So you can apply this even without waiting for Sigma to develop a log profile. It means that your DNG is the master source, that's the highest quality possible before applying any curve. But there's nothing stopping you to transcode it after you shot to log profile. If you want to save space, that's what you would do. But if your aim is to retain the highest quality and essentially the data that the sensor sees, the DNG, which is always linear, would be a way to go.
That's a very good explanation, because that question does come up quite a bit for people that are in the know, and I thought very adroitly answered there. We've got another question coming through, Mike. Keep them coming. We love the interaction.
Yeah, we got another one here. This is from Jason Wingrove. How did the dynamic range compare to the other cameras in your test and in the real world as well? Good question.
Yeah,
Good question.
I mean, now we're getting into other reasons why I love this camera. So it starts with the sensor. It's, as I said, very advanced backside illuminated sensor. The dynamic range is basically very, very high. I can't give you the exact number in stops, but the camera basically sees in the dark. It's when you shoot at 10,000 ISO, which you can, it's pretty much noiseless. Yeah. So up to 10,000 ISO, you can shoot the footage and not worry about noise at all. At about 50,000 ISO, the footage is still usable with noise reduction. So that's basically starlight. That's
amazing.
That's basically
amazing.
Not even moonlight. It's extremely sensitive and very low noise. That's particularly useful for low lighting conditions if you want to shoot sort of moody scenes with just candlelight or night outdoors shooting without just using available light. Moonlight is heaps. So if you have full moon, well, that's your lighting already there.
Sure. It's good to get all the background knowledge there. So guys, the sale's on now. 15% off the entire Sigma website, sigmaphoto.com.au. 15% off the entire site with that coupon code of ANZAC. So there's really never been a better time to shop from home, because the value you're getting now is the absolutely best it's ever going to get. We were in fact talking before the show went live, the way the Australian dollar's gone down, the way the freight costs have gone up. The Sigma FP camera will never be this affordable again in the immediate future, nor for the Sigma lenses. So jump on the site now and get buying, guys. One other really interesting point that we were talking about that's a bit unique with Sigma is Sigma released the 3D CAD models of this camera, which is something that other manufacturers haven't done. Pal, perhaps you want to explain why that's important and what you've got out of that yourself.
Well, generally, cinema equipment manufacturers, for some reason, keep those 3D models locked out, so you can't design accessories around the camera very easily. Sigma chose a different path. They said, okay, here's our 3D models, go out and design any accessories around it. We share it with everyone, available from the website to download. Well, it worked, because there is a lot of aftermarket accessories becoming available. And in my particular case, because I love this camera so much, I thought, wouldn't it be great to build a little underwater housing that fits in the palm of your hand, and use submersible lenses so you can actually capture all that amazing optical quality with this camera. And so my company is actually about to sell underwater housings that are not much bigger than the camera itself.
Fantastic. Well, we've got to put a link up to that when it's ready as well, because you are really the master of underwater shooting, aren't you, Pal? You might not be a stretch to say you're the best in the world in terms of underwater shooting. Well, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Not sure about that, but indeed, my company does a lot of research into underwater optics. Underwater medium has been a challenge for optics for a long time. We achieved amazing image quality on land, but it never kept up to that level, to that standard underwater. And what my company has done is that we managed to match or even exceed the optical quality of underwater images with those on land. And that's using submersible lenses that are designed purely to work underwater. They don't work above land. And they see underwater just if it was air, basically.
Amazing, amazing. And we're all really looking forward to seeing the underwater work you're doing now on Avatar. I don't think it's going to get any better than that in terms of underwater shooting. It sounds truly incredible. Then just to go really right back to basics, something really interesting about this camera, which even a very seasoned professional like you have noticed, Pal, is the ease of use and the menu setup of this Sigma. Can you just tell us how you find the general usage and the menus on this camera?
Yeah, so maybe start with a problem. I use a lot of cameras in my work, and there are some cameras. I'm not sure if Sony is listening, but
I'm sure they are.
But some cameras, absolutely amazing cameras, and have lots of good features. But I know what I want to change. But if I need to go 5 levels down through the menu, and it's page 67 in a menu system, well, that's not going to work very well in a production environment where time matters. What I found in Sigma, it's actually the best user interface. The very simple user interface that you know what you want to change. There is this, and I absolutely love this feature. It's got QS, quick select, and with just that one button, you get all the main settings available at your fingertip. Very simple, effective user interface. You don't search through those menus. You basically use them. You don't have to study the manual. You just take the camera. The moment you purchase the camera, you become proficient immediately without even. You don't have to learn it. It's obvious how to use it. So it's not just for a feature that's important for amateur use. It's actually a very important feature for professional use because time is money. And last thing you want is where's this setting?
Absolutely. I mean, it's something so basic, but still, you know, people at the very highest level of the profession are still worried about things as easy as menus. We've been talking a lot about the cine side of this camera. It's great. You can use it on a Hollywood blockbuster movie, but it's so seamlessly transitions to a still camera as well. There's a little switch on the top of the camera that flicks between cine and still, and we had one of our friends of the company, great ambassador for Sigma, Mr. Ben Messina, who was with us for our Queensland launch. He shot some landscapes on the FP camera, which were mind-blowing. I mean, you couldn't get a better landscape result than what Ben was getting on this Sigma FP camera. It was really, really amazing. I think we might have a few of them to throw up on the screen. We can go through them now, and you would just be blown away by the results you can get from this camera. Not just a cine camera, although it's great, works very well on that front, but also a still camera. It's just one of the true camera where there's no category. You can't put in either category, and it seamlessly transitions between the two. There's a sale on now, as I said, a limited time only. The stock we have in the country now is at the best possible price, best exchange rate, low freight cost, 15% off the website, sigmaphoto.com.au. There's never been a better time to buy. So if you've been thinking about getting the Sigma FP camera, been wanting to get into a bit of cine shooting, now is the time. Go to the website. That sale is live now. Have you been shooting any stills on yours, Pawel, or you?
I'm mostly a motion picture person. However, one thing worth noting is that in still picture mode, the resolution goes up to 6K, and you can still shoot DNG RAW, which is great. And again, the size of it is just very compelling. You can take it pretty much anywhere. There's one particular feature that we haven't talked about that I wanted to mention, and that sort of popped into my mind.
Sure.
When you actually look at the camera, there's one striking thing. It's very beautifully done. The manufacturing quality is one of the best I have seen. You can definitely compare it to the best in the industry. The precision is quite impressive.
Everything 100% made in Japan, pal. 100% made.
Yeah,
in Japan.
It's metal. It feels very solid. There is no sloppy sort of parts. Everything fits together very well. So I must say that Sigma has stepped up the game in terms of precision and quality. Look, I don't have any complaints whatsoever about the feel of it. As I said, it's all metal, very, very rugged. There's no flimsy kind of parts that you find on cheaper cameras. Yeah, just very impressive for me.
So we've got some more questions coming through now. I think, Mike, you're going to read us out a couple more questions for Pawel to answer.
Yes, we have another question here from John Kane, and that is, he's asking, what is your preferred workflow in Resolve to get the best out of the sensors and the dynamic range?
Yes, I do occasionally edit my own work. That's mostly just to find the shortcomings in my own filming. I usually just use DNG format straight off the camera. I don't transcode it in any way. I usually work with ISIS color space. That gives me the most flexibility to go sort of out of range and back into range with my grading. It makes it also consistent if you use multiple cameras, because you bring everything to ISIS color space. You can apply your grades and whatnot and edit with other footage seamlessly. and then apply a transform to your target color space, whether it's Rec 2020 or Rec 7 or 2 or any other color space that that's required. So yeah, that would be my.
So interesting there, pal. And then the next question is, we've got a few coming through on the website now.
So this next question is from Jim, and he's asking, is there a time limit for the shooting, and will the SSD keep up with RAW over long periods of time?
Yeah. To my knowledge, there isn't any time limit. I have 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte external memory, and I shot about 25 minutes takes. I'm not aware of any limit. I'm not sure, Clem, if
Not
you are.
not that we've reached. There seems to be no limit. Getting a bit more feedback there. There's no limit, so that's good to know.
One thing on that is the data rate is quite impressive on this camera. When recording to external SSD, the data rate can go up to 2800 megabits per second, which, just to put it in perspective, it's actually higher than Red Monster. So
Oh, we love the comparisons. It's good that you can say that, pal, and just honest comparison there against some very, very expensive kit.
So in comparison to even cameras in its own class, it's probably the highest I have seen. So what that practically means that all that quality that's captured by the sensor is preserved with those high data rates. And when you go to edit, you can use DNG, RAW, and you have big flexibility in terms of adjusting your brightness or going and change the colors, and there's just a lot of headroom there.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's we are finding those comparisons very, very interesting. And so, pal, can you tell us what's next on the horizon for you? We know you've been shooting on the latest Avatar movies. What's work's coming up for you in the future?
There's still some work to do with Avatar. I'm not sure exactly when that's going to resume. I'm also involved in one other bigger project. Unfortunately, can't talk much about it, but it's very exciting. And so, unlike many of my colleagues, I'm quite busy at the moment.
But that's good. It's good to hear. It's good to hear that you're still in demand and using the Sigma FP for all your work, for a lot of your work as well. I'll just remind you guys, the sale is now live on sigmaphoto.com.au. 15% off the entire site. Just use the coupon code of ANZAC. All the details will be down below in the description, but really get on the site now because there is limited stock available. It's been a lot of fun to have you in the studio today, pal. Someone really at the top of the cinematography game, and using the Sigma FP camera out of your own volition. Thanks so much for coming in and telling us about your experience with it. We could go on for a long time, but we're going to wrap things up now. Thank you very much for being on the program today. You answered some questions that were, it was great to get that interaction going, and we hope to see you again soon.
Well, thank you for having me.
To all our viewers out there in Isolation Land, thanks for joining us today, and we'll be back again soon with another live stream coming up very shortly. In the meantime, get on that website, sigmaphoto.com.au, check out our products, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks for being with us today, guys. All the best.